The year was 1867, and the town of Alder Creek smelled of smoke, whiskey, and sweat. Wagons rattled through its mud-churned main street, while men with dust in their beards and greed in their eyes leaned against railings or spat into the dirt. The railroad had cut a jagged scar through the Rockies, bringing with it laborers who bled for $1 and gamblers who killed for less. Some came west to find gold, others to forget their sins, but all of them knew one thing: nothing lasted here except hunger and the sound of boots hitting the ground. On that morning, a makeshift platform had been thrown together outside the trading post. Men gathered shoulder to shoulder, coins jangling in their fists, laughter sharp as a knife's edge. A woman stood on the boards, her back bent not from age, but from shame. Her name was Mei Lin, and she clutched the hands of her 3 children as if letting go would be the same as dying. The auctioneer, a florid man in suspenders and a bowler hat, waved his ledger like a preacher with scripture. "Gentlemen, what we got here is a bargain. One China woman, widowed, strong arms, good for laundry, cooking, or whatever work suits your fancy. 3 children come with her, skinny little things, but they'll grow into fine helpers. Start the bidding at $2. A murmur rippled through the crowd. Some men smirked, some shouted crude jokes, and others leaned in with predatory interest. Mei Lin's youngest, no more than 4, buried his face in her dress. The oldest girl, perhaps 9, held her chin high, though her lips trembled. Mei Lin whispered to them in her tongue, soft words meant to stitch courage where there was none. $2, someone barked. Laughter followed. Another voice called, 3, but I'll take the girls separate, if you please. The auctioneer chuckled. Not separate today, boys. One package deal. Mei Lin's stomach turned. She had buried her husband along the railroad grade after an avalanche claimed him. Since then, she had scrubbed clothes and cooked for men who never looked her in the eye. Debt had caught her like a snare, and now she stood on display as though she were cattle. She braced herself for the sound of her children's hands being torn from hers, but instead the bid stumbled and slowed. A Chinawoman, after all, was not worth much to men who wanted a servant or a whore they could show off. The crowd began to lose interest until a voice, deep and steady, cut through the noise. $6. Heads turned. At the back of the gathering stood a man taller than most, his shoulders squared beneath a faded buckskin coat. His beard was black with streaks of gray, his eyes hard as flint under the brim of a weather-beaten hat. A rifle rested in the crook of his arm like it was part of him. Folks whispered his name in tones half respectful, half wary. Caleb Foster, a mountain man, trapper, and fighter who lived where even wolves thought twice about treading. 6, the auctioneer repeated, laughing. Come now, Caleb. She's worth at least 10, with the brats thrown in. Let's not insult the lady. Caleb didn't blink. 6, for all of them. The silence that followed was sharper than any jeer. Men shifted uneasily, none willing to cross a man known for breaking jaws and surviving winters that killed hardier stock. The auctioneer cleared his throat, shrugged, and slammed his ledger shut. Sold. $6. Gasps, chuckles, a few curses. Caleb stepped forward, slapped the coins into the auctioneer's palm, and then looked at Mei Lin. His gaze wasn't hungry or mocking. It was level, unreadable, as if weighing her against some private reckoning. He pulled a wool blanket from his pack and draped it across her shoulders without a word. The crowd muttered, "What's he want with her? That Chinawoman won't last a month in the hills. He's gone soft, mark me." Mei Lin tightened her grip on her children. Every instinct told her to recoil, to distrust, but the man's silence unnerved her more than cruelty would have. She lowered her eyes, waiting for his order, but instead he turned and began to walk away. After a long moment, she followed. The sun dipped low as they left Alder Creek, the sound of laughter and curses fading behind them. Caleb's stride was long and unhurried. The children stumbled to keep up, their small feet raising puffs of dust. Mei Lin dared a glance at him. His jaw was set, his eyes fixed on the horizon. He carried no whip, no rope, only a rifle and the smell of pine and smoke clinging to his coat. By nightfall, They reached the edge of the forest where the mountains rose like jagged teeth. Caleb made camp with practiced ease, striking flint, laying wood, coaxing fire into life. Mei Lin huddled with her children near the flames, the blanket wrapped around them. Wolves howled in the distance, and the children whimpered. Caleb sat with his rifle across his knees, eyes sweeping the dark. He didn't speak, didn't look at her, but his presence felt like a wall between them and whatever prowled beyond. She watched him in secret. His hands were scarred, his face weathered by wind and years. He looked like a man carved from the land itself. But behind the sternness there was something else, an exhaustion deeper than bone. When the youngest cried, Caleb stirred the fire higher without a word, sending sparks dancing upward. The next day, the trail grew steeper, the air thinner. Mei Lin carried the little one when he could no longer walk. Her arms ached, her back screamed, but she pushed on. Caleb occasionally slowed, adjusting his pace without comment. At a stream, he filled a canteen, handed it to her first before drinking himself. She hesitated, then accepted, the cold water burning her throat with relief. Still, doubt gnawed at her. Why had he spent money on her and the children? Men did not spend even a cent without wanting something in return. Each step into the wilderness felt like another step into captivity. On the third evening, when the fire cracked and the stars burned cold above, she gathered the courage to speak. Her English was halting, each word carefully shaped. "Why, you buy us?" Caleb looked up from his whetstone where he sharpened his knife. His gaze held hers for a long moment, so long she thought he wouldn't answer. Finally, he said, "Didn't buy, kept." Then he went back to sharpening. The words left her unsettled. Did he mean protection or ownership? Her heart thudded with questions she couldn't voice. The children, though, began to shift. The oldest girl watched Caleb with wary curiosity, edging closer to the fire when he cooked. The middle boy followed at a distance, mimicking the way Caleb carried wood or stacked stones. Only the youngest clung stubbornly to Mei Lin's skirts, eyes wide with fear. As they pressed higher into the mountains, the land grew harsher. Pines gave way to stretches of rock and snow patches that never melted. Caleb's cabin lay somewhere beyond, though Mei Lin could not yet picture it. Her legs shook, her shoes worn thin, but she kept walking. Each night ended the same. Firelight, silence, the children pressed against her, and Caleb a dark sentinel against the wild. But whispers from Alder Creek had a way of traveling faster than footsteps. Riders had seen the mountain man leaving with his strange new charges. Tongues wagged. Some men laughed at the folly of carrying extra mouths into the hills. Others spat, calling it a waste, or worse, a betrayal of white pride. And a few, the cruelest, took it as an insult that Caleb had snatched the Chinawoman out from under them. Men who had bid in jest now drank together in anger, their promises sour and sharp. Mei Lin didn't know this yet. She only felt the weight of eyes on her back long after they had left town. At night, she dreamed of her husband crushed beneath snow, of the railroad men who cursed her accent, of the children being pulled from her arms. She woke to Caleb's silhouette against the fire, motionless but awake, and wondered if her dreams were safer than the waking world. By the time the forest thinned and the first smoke of a chimney rose against the sky, Mei Lin's body was near breaking. The children stumbled with exhaustion, their lips cracked, their clothes threadbare. Caleb said nothing, but when the youngest tripped, he bent and lifted the boy into his arms without ceremony, carrying him the rest of the way. The cabin stood on a ridge above a frozen creek. Logs notched tight, roof heavy with pitch, smoke curling from a stone chimney. It was not large nor fine, but it was solid, built by a man expecting to endure. Caleb pushed the door open, letting the smell of pine and old smoke drift out. Inside lay a table, a cot, furs stacked in a corner, and tools hung neat on the wall. No woman's touch, no softness, just survival. Mei Lin stood in the doorway, clutching her children, uncertain if she had walked into safety or another kind of prison. Caleb set down the boy, glanced at her once, then began stacking wood by the hearth. The children crept inside, drawn by warmth. Mei Lin followed slowly, her heart hammering. Caleb lit the fire, filled a pot with snow to melt, and moved with the steady rhythm of a man who had done these things 1,000 times. Not once did he tell her what was expected of her. The fire caught, shadows leapt along the walls, and outside the wind howled like a warning. Mei Lin tightened the blanket around her shoulders and whispered a prayer her children could not hear. She did not yet know if she had been spared or doomed. And as the first night in that cabin closed around them, she asked herself the question that had haunted her since the auction block. Had this man saved them out of mercy, or had he only hidden his true price? Snow fell hard the morning after Mei Lin and her children stepped into Caleb Foster's cabin, sifting through the air in steady silence, blanketing the ridge and cutting off the trail back to Alder Creek. The wind whistled down from the peaks, rattling the shutters, and inside the cabin firelight flickered across rough-hewn logs that smelled of pitch and smoke. Mei Lin rose before dawn, used to labor, her body trained to work even when exhaustion weighted her bones. She stoked the embers, coaxed a flame, and set about making rice from the small bundle she had hidden deep in her clothing. The children huddled near the warmth, their eyes wide with the kind of wonder that is half fear, half hope. Caleb stirred on his cot, eyes opening slow, then steady, watching without a word. She did not know the rules of this man's world, but instinct told her to work, to prove she was worth the $6 he had spent. He rose and stepped outside, boots crunching against the snow, his rifle slung across his back. When he returned, a hair hung limp in his hand, shot clean through the head. He set it on the table, flint-eyed, then nodded toward the pot. Mei Lin took the hint. With careful hands, she skinned the animal, working as her mother once had in a village half a world away. Caleb watched, his face unreadable, but something softened in his jaw when he saw her movements were quick and sure. The days settled into a rhythm. Caleb chopped wood, checked traps, and taught the oldest boy how to stack kindling and light tinder without wasting matches. Mei Lin scrubbed, mended, cooked. The children grew less frightened, their shoulders straightening when they realized no blow would follow a mistake. The girl, eldest of the three, lingered near Caleb's tools, studying the careful order of knives, awls, and traps as though she might understand the man through the objects he touched. Caleb caught her staring once, and instead of scolding, handed her a small carving knife and a block of pine. She carved clumsy shapes, smiling when he nodded approval. Yet the wilderness was merciless. A storm rolled down from the ridge one night, with a howl, tearing shingles from the roof, shaking the cabin till the children cried out. Caleb climbed onto the roof in the middle of the gale, hammer in one hand, teeth clenched against the wind. Mei Lin held the ladder steady, her dress whipping, her hair lashing her face. Snow blinded, ice clawed, but together they braced against it. When dawn broke, the cabin still stood, battered but whole. Caleb descended stiff-limbed, frost clinging to his beard, and for the first time she touched his arm, not in fear, but in silent gratitude. He nodded once, but in his eyes was a flicker of respect, as though he had not expected such steel from her. Danger prowled closer than weather. Wolves tested the edges of the ridge, their yellow eyes gleaming in the dark. One night their goat bleated in terror, chained near the shed. Caleb burst through the door, with rifle ready, Mei Lin right behind, clutching a shovel. The pack scattered, but one wolf lunged. Caleb's shot rang out, sharp as lightning. The beast fell twitching in the snow. Mei Lin swung her shovel at another that came too close, her cry tearing the night. The children screamed inside. Together they drove the pack off. The goat shivered, alive but bloodied. Caleb knelt, his hand brushing Mei Lin's arm where the wolf's teeth had grazed her. Without asking, he brought her inside, cleaned the wound with whiskey, and bound it with strips of linen. His fingers trembled, not from clumsiness, but from something deeper, something he did not voice. She watched his face as he worked, scarred, weathered, yet human. He muttered low, almost to himself, "Didn't buy you, kept you safe." The words settled in her chest like a coal, smoldering with meaning she could not yet name. At night, Mei Lin told stories to her children in her own tongue. Tales of dragons and rivers, of ancestors who walked long roads. Caleb sat by the fire, sharpening his knife, listening without asking for translation. Sometimes when the children fell asleep, he spoke instead of a brother lost in the war, of battles that left him weary of men, of why he chose the mountains over towns that stank of blood and lies. His voice was rough, but his eyes turned softer in the firelight, shadows carrying the weight of grief he rarely showed. The bond between them grew not in words but in gestures. A shared look when a storm rattled the cabin, the silent passing of food, the way he lingered when one of the children laughed. Trust began to root in the frozen ground, fragile but alive. Then, one afternoon, trouble came riding. Hooves drummed down the trail, 3 men reeking of whiskey and mischief. They were the same who had jeered at the auction block, their pride stung by Caleb's quiet bid. They dismounted, swaggering, boots crunching snow. The leader, a broad man with a red scarf, shouted, "Foster, we come for your bargain. $6 for a woman and her brats? Hell, we'll give you 20 and save you the trouble." Caleb stepped out, rifle in hand, calm as stone. "Not for sale." The men laughed, circling. One spat in the snow. "You gone soft, mountain man? Hiding away with a heathen and her spawn? Don't seem fitting." The children clung to Mei Lin's skirts, eyes wide. Her heart hammered, but she kept them behind her. Caleb's stance never shifted, fingers steady on the trigger. His voice cut low, sharp. "Turn back." Silence. Then the red scarf man sneered, hands raised mockingly. "We'll go for now, but you can't keep wolves at bay forever." They mounted, spurs clinking, and rode off with laughter echoing through the pines. Caleb lowered his rifle slowly. Mei Lin exhaled, her knees near buckling. She knew then the danger had only just begun. That night the children would not sleep. She sang them lullabies until their eyes closed, though her own stayed open. Caleb sat by the fire, rifle across his lap, jaw clenched. When her gaze met his, there was no comfort in his eyes, only a promise he would kill before letting harm come. She believed it, yet fear gnawed. What if killing wasn't enough? The days that followed carried a sharper edge. Caleb moved with alertness, checking traps more often, circling the ridge before dusk. Mei Lin worked harder, teaching the children to be quiet, to hide if strangers came. She began to see her own reflection in him, a creature shaped by survival, wary of trust, yet bound to those under their care. One evening, as snow sifted outside, she reached for his hand while tending his wound from chopping wood. Her touch was light, hesitant, but he didn't pull away. Their eyes met, silence holding what words could not. For the first time since her husband's death, she felt a spark of safety, though fragile as glass. But safety was never promised in the mountains. Rumors carried on wind. Caleb's kin were coming, blood of his blood who despised outsiders, who would not stomach the sight of a Chinese woman and 3 children under his roof. She did not know when they would arrive, only that each knock at the door or echo of hooves might bring them. The threat hung heavier than the storm clouds above. She found herself standing at the threshold one night, staring out at the black line of trees, the fire behind her. The children slept inside. Caleb sat cleaning his rifle, and she whispered to the cold air, "He bought us with $6. But maybe he saved us with more." And yet, even as warmth bloomed in her chest, she felt the future closing in. Men with cruel eyes and hearts like stone, family ties that could cut deeper than any blade. She turned back inside, pulling the door shut, knowing the test of their fragile bond was about to begin. The snow had not yet melted from the ridge when the sound of hooves carried up the trail, muffled by the trees but steady enough to chill the air inside Caleb's cabin. Mei Lin was kneeling by the hearth, her hands red from scrubbing, when she froze. The children, restless from weeks of storm, quieted at once, sensing the change in her breath. Caleb stood from his chair, his face as still as stone, and set his rifle against his shoulder. He had been waiting for this moment ever since word reached him in the pines that his kin would come, and now the hour had found them. 3 riders broke through the tree line, their silhouettes etched against the gray sky. At their head rode Samuel Foster, Caleb's younger brother by 2 years, though bitterness had made him older in spirit. His coat was cleaner than Caleb's, his boots polished, and the set of his mouth carried the smugness of a man who had never faced winter alone. Behind him rode his wife, Ruth, and their eldest boy, lean-faced and quick-eyed. They dismounted with the familiarity of kin, but there was no warmth in their movements. Samuel's voice rang sharp. "Caleb, words reach town you brought trouble up into these hills. That true?" Caleb's reply was low but firm. "Depends on what you call trouble." Samuel's gaze swept the cabin door, where Mei Lin now stood, her children clutching her skirts. His eyes narrowed, jaw tightening as though he'd bitten into something sour. "Lord Almighty," he muttered, "it's true. You brought a Chinawoman into this house. With young ones, no less." Ruth gasped, drawing her shawl tighter, as if Mei Lin carried pestilence. The boy spat in the snow, muttering words his mother didn't scold. Caleb shifted, rifle cradled but not raised. "Samuel," he said, "this is my home. My roof, my fire. What I choose to bring into it is my decision." "No," Samuel snapped, stepping forward. "It's our father's blood that built this ridge. You shame at bringing her here. You shame the Fosters. I won't stand for it." The tension hung like a drawn bowstring. Mei Lin pulled the children back, her heart hammering so loud she thought they all might hear it. She understood few words, but Samuel's tone was clear enough. This was no welcome. Inside, Ruth's voice rose, sharp as a knife. "Send them away, Caleb, before it's too late. Folks are talking already. You'll burn with them if you keep on this path." But Caleb didn't move. His eyes locked on his brother, the years of shared childhood, of blood and memory, all boiling into this moment. "I lived through war to see men torn apart for less than this. If you can't stand under my roof, Samuel, ride back down the mountain." Silence followed, cold and deep. Samuel's hand twitched near his belt, but he did not draw. Instead, he spat into the snow and turned on his heel. "You'll regret it," he said, mounting his horse. "When the town turns its back, don't expect us to lend a hand." His wife and boy followed, their glares sharp enough to cut. The riders vanished back into the trees, but the weight of their judgment lingered heavy. That night, the cabin was quiet save for the hiss of fire. Mei Lin moved about softly, the children tucked in, though none slept soundly. She glanced at Caleb, his face half hidden in shadow. "Family?" she asked in broken English. He nodded once. "Family?" She lowered her eyes, uncertain if that word meant safety or danger. Days passed uneasy. The children grew more accustomed to the routines, gathering, kindling, learning to sew small tears in clothing. But beneath it all lay a tension Mei Lin could not shake. She caught Caleb staring sometimes into the trees, rifle in hand, as though expecting more than wolves. His silence grew heavier, not cold but guarded, as if he carried the whole ridge on his shoulders. The true storm broke a week later. It began with smoke, faint at first, curling past the treetops. Caleb caught the scent before anyone else and stiffened. He motioned for Mei Lin to stay inside, then slipped out the door. She followed despite her fear, clutching her shawl tight. Down the slope, torches flickered. Men 4, maybe 5, riding closer, laughter carried on the wind. Caleb recognized them. The same rough faces from Alder Creek, the ones who had offered $20 for what he had claimed with 6. They had come not to bargain this time, but to take. He slipped back inside, voice low but urgent. "Keep the children close. Do not open the door unless I call." His eyes met hers, steady, hard. For a moment she saw not just the mountain man, but the soldier he once had been. The riders reached the ridge, their torches tossing sparks. One called out, "Foster, come on out. We've a mind to warm ourselves by your fire." Another laugh followed, mean and hungry. Caleb stepped onto the porch, rifle leveled. "Turn back," he called. His voice carried like thunder over snow. "Ain't no welcome for you here." The leader sneered. "We ain't asking." With a signal, 2 men rode forward, flinging torches toward the shed. Flames licked dry wood, smoke rising fast. The children cried out. Mei Lin's heart surged with terror, but something else too, a steel born of desperation. She grabbed the iron pot from the hearth, filled with boiling water, and stationed herself near the door. If the men came through, she would fight. Gunfire cracked. Caleb's rifle roared, dropping one man's torch into the snow. Another shot rang out, splintering wood. The attackers scattered, circling, firing back. Bullets thudded against the cabin walls. Mei Lin ducked low, pulling the children against her, whispering prayers through clenched teeth. A figure lunged at the doorway. Mei Lin hurled the boiling water, a scream tearing from her throat. The man shrieked, stumbling back, skin blistering. Caleb's shot dropped him before he hit the snow. The fight raged fierce and short. Caleb moved with grim precision, every shot measured, his body a wall between the intruders and those inside. Two men fled into the night, curses trailing. Silence followed, broken only by the crackle of the burning shed. Caleb staggered, hand pressed to his side. Blood seeped between his fingers. Mei Lin rushed to him, catching his weight before he fell. She dragged him inside, laying him by the fire, her hands steady though her heart pounded. She tore linen, pressed it to the wound, whispering, "Stay, stay." His eyes, clouded with pain, found hers. "You fight fierce," he rasped. Tears burned her eyes, but she did not falter. "We live because you." He caught her wrist weakly, his grip firm despite the wound. "No, because us." Through the night, she tended him, feeding the fire, changing the bandage, whispering words in her tongue that he could not understand but felt all the same. The children hovered, quiet, their fear slowly giving way to determination. By dawn, Caleb still breathed, pale but alive. Days of slow healing followed. Mei Lin became both nurse and sentinel, never straying far. The children helped, fetching water, keeping firewood stacked. When Caleb finally managed to sit upright, she was there, steadying him. His eyes lingered on her longer now, as if seeing her not as burden, not as stranger, but as something far closer. The fragile peace shattered when hooves thundered once more up the ridge. Samuel returned, drawn by rumors of gunfire and smoke. He entered without knocking, his face hard. He saw the bandage, smelled the blood, and spat. "This is what comes of your folly. You will die for her, Caleb, and for what? Shame." Caleb's voice, though weak, carried steel. "Not shame. Family." Samuel's mouth twisted. "They are not your blood." "They are now," Caleb said. His eyes burned with a fire Mei Lin had never seen before. He reached for her hand, lacing his fingers with hers before his brother's gaze. "This woman is my wife. These children are mine." The words struck the room like a hammer. Mei Lin gasped softly, the children staring wide-eyed. Samuel's face flushed red, rage twisting his features. "You damn fool. You'll lose everything." "Then I'll lose it," Caleb said, voice steady, "but I won't lose them." Samuel turned on his heel, fury snapping in every step. He stormed out, leaving the door swinging in his wake. The sound of hooves faded down the ridge, but the weight of his anger remained. Inside, silence stretched. Mei Lin's heart raced, torn between fear and a strange warmth that spread through her chest. She searched Caleb's face, finding nothing but truth there. "Wife," she whispered. He nodded, firm despite his pallor. "If you'll have it." Tears welled in her eyes, but this time they were not of sorrow. She bowed her head, voice breaking. "Yes." The days that followed carried a new rhythm. Caleb's wound healed slow, but strength returned. The children grew bolder, no longer glancing over their shoulders each time the wind shifted. And when the snow fell again, soft and heavy, it blanketed not only the ridge but the fragile bond that had taken root within the cabin walls. On a clear morning, with the peaks glittering white and the sky wide as forever, Caleb and Mei Lin stood before the hearth, the children at their sides. No preacher came, no paper signed. Only words, spoken plain, witnessed by fire and snow. Caleb's vow was simple: "I'll keep you, always." Mei Lin's was quieter, but fierce as any promise ever sworn. We are one family. The children clapped, laughter breaking the solemn air. Outside, the mountain stood vast and unyielding, but inside the cabin burned a warmth greater than the fire. The narrator's voice, had there been one, might have said, "Love on the frontier was not bought with coins nor granted by kin. It was forged in fire, blood, and the refusal to let go. And sometimes it began with $6, but ended with something no measure of gold could ever claim."